Well, here's something interesting. When they do surveys among divorced couples and the woman initiates the divorce, one of the top reasons she always gives is she feels like, right? They never say I think. They say I feel like he didn't do enough for me, right? It's like the number one thing. And I think that we give women like a totally like overblown expectation that men are supposed to like serve us or be doing. He wasn't emotionally taking care of me usually means like I wanted him to anticipate that I want him to do a bunch of shit that he would never think about that I would want him to do and stuff like that. So if we see that women are just generally always dissatisfied, they don't think their partner as a partner, I don't do the partnership thing, but they always say my partner isn't supporting me, he's not giving me enough, he's not doing enough.
You know what that usually means? He's not good in bed. That's why she's upset.
Well, I have a question.
Telling you.
Well, I'm sorry.
Just do your woman right, and she'll clean the dishes, dude.
I mean, that's kind of how it works in the Wilson house. But
yeah, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of like, women initiate divorces. I'm just curious because you've gotten divorced. Did you initiate your divorces?
Nope.
Neither one. Divorces?
No, I got abandoned twice. 2 major L's for me. 2 big L's.
So I mean, it
sounds
loser. Like you would have to agree that sometimes men can be the problem, whether they initiate the divorce or leave you.
All people can be problems, but
yeah. So why do you assume that in all these cases it's women saying, "I feel this way," and she's secretly in the wrong?
Because we choose them. I did not have to make babies with either of those guys. I did not have to marry my ex-husband. I chose them, and then when I got what I ordered, it didn't turn out to be what I thought it was. And now I'm not saying that, I shouldn't have to say this, but I do. I'm not saying abuse is ever okay. But what I am saying is that women think that we're going to be the gatekeepers of sex, we're going to be the choosers, we're going to pick the guys, and then we have ridiculous expectations. We think that it's going to be Disney princess like Grid 1 Motorsports was saying. At least a lot of women do. They have expectations that don't match reality. They want the man to provide. They want the man to lead. They want the man to...
Isn't that what you charge?
But I'm interested actually...
That's what everyone
But then
says
when he does that, they're like, oh, he's controlling, he's abusive.
I am interested to know what you think, because biblically, the man is called, has the higher calling. The man is called to emulate Christ. The woman is called to emulate the church. This is not an argument for women to just, whatever, but I'm interested to know what you think about that, because it's harder to be like Christ than it is to be like the church. And Christ gave his life for the church. He loved her, gave his life for her. And while the church is supposed to submit, just like the wife submits to the husband, I do think that is the harder role. And so more responsibility, it shouldn't necessarily be tit for tat. I think the male actually has the higher calling and the more responsibility.
I agree with that, but where I went wrong when I was young was I had a very I was Christian, but I was like a cultural Protestant Christian. I thought, like, if you'd asked me at the time, I was serious about it, but I also had this, like, we were talking about the libertarian American idea. And when I was young, I bought into the stupid shit that a lot of us buy into, like, oh, we don't need a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. We're gonna get married eventually. I'm sure it will happen. We've talked about it. So it's fine that we're living together now. Like, I made all these little concessions. I made all these little excuses for things I thought were fine. And it was like, well, I'm a really capable person and I can do it myself. I just had like the whole wrong view of the world and relationships and how that works. Part of that is I had a Marxist feminist mother who was deeply indoctrinated.
What?
Yeah, and she would, kind of share this stuff with me, and divorced my dad, kicked him out of the house. And so it was like, comparatively, I thought I was pretty conservative, but I was basically just like a normie girl who was like, I'll just live with my boyfriend because it's practical and we'll split the bills. And then when that didn't work out, I was like devastated. And now, of course, 43-year-old me would look back and be like, oh, honey, you were so silly thinking that, like, oh, we're just going to live together and that'll work out. I think most women do that. I think they think it's fine.
I'm sorry. Did you convert after you married your husband now?
Yeah. We both converted at the same time, like 3.5 years ago, to Orthodoxy. We went from being like normie, non-denominational Protestants to being like more conservative Protestants, and then realizing there's a whole batch of problems that comes with that, and then looking for answers in church history, do a little digging on the history of the church, and you find the Orthodox Church, and there's kind of no turning back after that, at least for us. So I'm just saying, like, I think this whole modern idea of we're going to have an egalitarian relationship where I work and he works and we're going to raise the kids together and we're going to be partners and we're going to share the chores, it doesn't really work very well for most people in reality. And we can see that in the extremely low rates of marriage and the really high rates of divorce and just the general dissatisfaction. This whole podcast exists because people can't figure out what the hell is going on with male-female relationships.
Well, what if both parties do work then? Because, I mean, a lot of people, both parties have to work because of our economy at this time.
That's true, but the reason they have to work is because women joined the workforce in huge numbers in the 70s, and wages for men have been stagnant ever since then, have not kept up with inflation. So yeah, now we're in a position where a lot of moms have to work. Now,
they made the women have to join the workforce because the economy was already doing what it was doing.
And the whole point, like one of the big purposes
no
behind
women want to join the workforce. That's just
it's so stupid. My oldest daughter, when she started working, she like graduated high school and started working, she called me and she's like, Mom, why do we do this? Why do we pretend that working a job is awesome and that we love it? This is stupid and I hate it. And I was like,
unless you have a real purpose. There's a small percentage of women who have a real purpose. They have real talent that should not be wasted. I 100% agree with that, and that's okay. But it's the same way that we push everybody into college, and not everybody belongs in college. If you have a real intellect, you have a real passion for something you're studying, go for it.
Yeah.
I feel like that didn't really answer my question, because I don't really mind, like, I mean, if I could control it, then I guess because
well, you can. Here's my answer to that, because people ask me this. They're like, well, but I have to work. And I'm like, you don't. You would just have to make a lot of choices you don't want to make. You'd have to make a lot of compromises you don't want to. You might have to move to a cheap area in the rural Midwest where you can afford to stay home. You might have to work part-time remotely from home so that you can prioritize the kids. There are ways to do it. You might have to have a cash.
We might have to have a financial revolution and overthrow the existing
I was going to say, it sounds like
oppression.
Financial collapse will have to happen, because if women exit the workforce en masse, then you're just going to run into a bunch of different problems. If everyone moves to the Midwest en masse, property cost of living is just going to go up.
There's a difference between, if you're asking me for my prescription, there's a difference between what I would prescribe for an individual person right now dealing with the system we're in versus what I would prescribe for the system long term. Long term, I think feminism will be looked back upon as like this awful disaster that we tried and it failed and it was horrible, and we're going to
be ruled by feminist gargoyles for a while. So
we are, but the problem with it is that it's literally not sustainable. South Korea, the most westernized Asian country, has a birth rate of 0.78. Japan and Canada are now euthanizing the elderly because there's more elderly people in diapers than there are babies in diapers. The supply chain problems that we've been dealing with since the cough stuff has never gone away because we actually can't import enough illegal immigrants to keep up with the supply and demand of what we need in the country.